Welcome to Cinder Seeking, an education website focused on various aspects of the Black experience in the United States. This year, we look at the secular and sacred, Juke joints and Jesus in the Gullah Geechee corridor of South Carolina. In the blog post, Giving Voice to a Hidden History, Establishing the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, Michael Allen writes, "The Gullah people, known as Geechee in some places, are the descendants of enslaved Africans brought from West Africa to work on rice and indigo plantations that extended from St. Johns River in Florida to Cape Fear River in North Carolina." Allen continues, "The Gullah people's language, food, and religion came from their native homelands of Africa. These cultural identities merged with the experiences forced upon them in North America, creating distinctive and rich art forms, language, and music that has been integral to our American fabric. I would add to Allen's list the creation of all Black spaces for the free expression of those cultural striving." So before we can begin a discussion of the secular and sacred and their role in Southern Black communities, in particular the Gullah Geechee community, we must delve into the conditions in which these two subversive incarnations of Black survival and joy, the Juke joint and church, arose. Why these two spaces? Because the story of Black pain in the Americas is well documented, even by those who would gloss over it in their telling of the birth and growth of the United States as a superpower. Most of us know, however, the minutest of details of the triangular slave trade, but seeing it presented as an animation demonstrates even more clearly the odds against our ancestors surviving, thriving, and somehow finding joy. We may have seen diagrams of the unsanitary bellies of slave ships with our ancestors packed in, layered on top of one another, left to swelter in each other's excrement. We may have learned, at least superficially, through textbooks and films, of the back-breaking labor and exploitation of their knowledge, skill, and craftsmanship. Evidence of the cruelty and indignities committed against our forebears exists in the forms of photographs, artistic renderings, tools of torture, bills of sales, and runaway posters, and the buildings where these atrocities took place often still stand in the South. As the evidence of horrors continue to be found, we are not surprised. We mourn again.
It was almost considered an urban legend for one Horry County community, but a recent discovery now brings forth truth and history. And now that the residents have found it, they're determined to make sure this significant piece of land is never forgotten again. WMBF News Today anchor Christelle Bell takes us there.
Lost but now found. That's how many of the descendants of the Bucksport community are feeling after recently discovering this cemetery with their ancestors. Now, it's still in the preliminary stages of finding all of the grave sites out here, but some of these grave sites date back as far as the 17 and 1800s.
We found you. We found you. Because, you know, you hear about it and it becomes like a legend. It's almost like Bigfoot. You know, does it really exist?
Deep in the forest, it does exist. Now part of the Bucksport community, once known as Bucks Township, you'll find the Eddy Lake Cemetery.
A carving that what appears to be a cow.
Always said to be here, but no one never knew exactly where it was located until recently. Mary Owens can take the credit for the discovery. She's the self-proclaimed historian of Bucksport and says as a child she heard the stories of Eddy Lake.
Often they talked about Eddy Lake, how their parents worked at the sawmill at Eddy Lake.
And it was the stories of her great-great-grandfather, Reverend John Mishu, a well-respected traveling preacher, that prompted her curiosity.
Your great-grandfather's buried at Eddy Lake. And I decided at that point I was going to find my great-grandfather.
Determined to leave no stone unturned to find her lost relative, she followed the trail.
I took the 1860 census, which does not give our name, only a number, the owner, and the number of slaves it had.
Yeah, this is ground zero for our growth in Horry County.
Left behind by her ancestors that led her here.
I was connected to this area immediately. As I took a step out here, I said, oh, this is it.
Sure enough, it was just as simple as walking through the woods, and they've been here, you know, waiting on us all this time.
But in the midst of our shared trauma, there are facets of Black joy that we can discuss, along with the litany of our pain and the injustices enacted upon us. It is not either or neither nor. Because overcoming is second nature to African Americans, what we might take for granted is that since our ancestors' arrival on the shores of the Americas, of South Carolina, of the Gullah Geechee corridor, we have been making a way out of no way. Tragically, beautifully, gracefully, awkwardly, we made a way. We are the descendants of a people who survived conditions unfathomable to most, treatment of the most cruel kinds, rape, torture, and all other manner of inhumanity under the system of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and other forms of legalized systemic oppression. Yet they sought and found, as we continue to seek today in this American wilderness, solace, comfort, joy, and respite. When they could, they carved out secret and not-so-secret sanctuaries in plain sight. Sanctuaries both sacred and secular. And their joy in those spaces, those sanctuaries, was just as revolutionary as raising arms. Before and after the Civil War, they found these sanctuaries. Join us for part 2 of Juke Joints in Jesus. Freedom of movement, the desire and creation of sanctuaries away from the white gaze.